The Delaware and Hudson Railroad has been a favorite of railfan photographers for many years. The D&H has led a successful life as a lean, efficient railroad in the classic bridge line mold. But suddenly, in the early 70s, 4 old Alco locomotives catapulted the D&H to center stage, where the spotlight of publicity shone long and bright. The famous D&H PAs, ex-Santa Fe engines, were put into service on the Albany-Montreal passenger runs. The PAs were followed a few years later by a couple of old Baldwin freighters from the Monongahela. Soon the hillsides north of Binghamton, New York, reverberated with the drumming of the burbling Baldwins as they dug in and performed pusher service on Belden Hill, to the delight of rail fans all over the East. Today, much has changed. The Sharks and the PAs are gone, and both the Erie-Lackawanna and the Lehigh Valley are gone, merged into Conrail. The D&H operations in Binghamton were affected drastically when Conrail came into being, and yet the D&H still lives on as a solvent northeastern railroad. Perhaps part of the reason lies in the fact that the D&H has been able to adapt to the changing times and has continued to run a tight ship, utilizing their well-maintained fleet of Alco and GE power to move trains over the road. The popularity of the road among the ranks of rail fans remains high, partly due to those Alco locomotives, and partly because the D&H operations lend themselves to interesting photography. So let's have a look at these operations and see how the D&H runs their trains and utilizes their locomotives. We'll begin on the morning of August 15, 1981. At East Binghamton, at the old Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Yard, train BM1 is pulling up so the pushers can tie on back at BY Tower. The D&H operations are now almost exclusively handled out of this ex-Lackawanna yard because it's larger than the old D&H Bevier Street yard and has room for expansion. In fact, the D&H has plans on the drawing board to double the size of this yard and add a locomotive servicing facility here. The pusher crew has U-23B number 2311 for their lead unit. A U-33C teamed up with an Alco C-420 make up the rest of the pusher set for a total of 7,600 horsepower. The pushers usually tie on here at BY Tower for northbounds over Belden Hill. As soon as the pushers tied on, we moved quickly to a spot just north of Nolan Road at Port Dickinson, New York, just outside Binghamton. This is Belden Hill, and the head-end lash-up of 2 Alco RS-36s and 2 U-23Bs are in the 8th notch, putting all 8,200 horsepower to work climbing the grade. At Tunnel, New York, the rumble of the Alco 251 prime movers in the lead units grew steadily louder as we waited at the north portal of the tunnel. This tunnel has some very tight clearances and is a serious bottleneck for the northbound operations out of Binghamton, as you'll see later. Over the summit, BM-1 was really rolling as she hit the big bridge at Nineveh, New York, on her way to Mechanicsville. In the meantime, a somewhat smaller operation was going on as ML1, the Mills job, went about its work on the ex-Lehigh Valley branch through Flemingville, New York. The Flemingville depot has been completely restored into a small transportation museum by rail fan Jim Meade. The 12 spot, a small 040 saddle tanker, runs on weekends on a mile or so of this branch. The main online industry on this branch is a large propane storage facility at Harford Mills. We caught up with the Mills job just as they had finished their work there and were heading back to Owego, and just as it began to rain.
You gotta close up. You gotta close up.
He's got the closed door. I left him back there.
On the way back to Binghamton, the Mills job operates under symbol ML2. Here she pulls her train past the old Lehigh Valley Depot in Owego as the rain continues to fall slowly. Upon reaching Owego, the D&H has trackage rights on the old Erie Main. But before the Mills job can get out on the high iron, a Conrail eastbound has to clear the plant. Once the Conrail man is clear, ML2 gets the okay to move off the Lehigh Valley connecting track and onto the Erie Main. But since all of these crossovers are hand-lined, the move is made at a very slow speed. After the train clears all the crossovers, they stop long enough for the flagman to close them up, and then ML2 is rolling east again back to Binghamton. Bright and early the next morning, we were once again at the DL&W yard as BM1 pulled down past the pusher set so the pushers can tie on. BM1's power today is led by C424M number 452, just off the Mills job the day before, followed by an RS-36 and two RS-3Ms for a total of 7,400 horsepower on the head end. The pusher set today is led by C424M number 463, a unit we'll see later on MB5, along with a U-23B and a C420 for a total of 6,300 horsepower. Phelps Road is another good spot to watch the D&H tackle Belden Hill. The light is best here in the morning since we're looking almost due west. The lighting at the location can be tough in the afternoon, though, if the sun is shining. At Tunnel, New York, just south of the tunnel itself by about a half a mile, BM1 has it made. The summit of Belden Hill is actually within the tunnel. The chances are pretty good that if you're shooting pictures on the D&H, you won't be alone. The 13,700 horses that have lifted BM1 out of the valley and up to the summit have done their work well as BM1 makes good time up the hill. With their work done for the moment, the helpers cut off on the fly. And as soon as they know BM1 is over the summit okay, they move up to the phone box. The head-end brakeman calls the dispatcher to find out what their next move will be. Depending on the traffic, they'll either drift back downhill and into Binghamton to help another northbound over the summit, or they'll follow BM1 over the top and down the other side to SW Cabin. Today, that's what they'll do. There they will tie onto a southbound and help them up and over the summit. SW Cabin, also known as Nineveh Junction, is a busy spot on the D&H for several reasons. This is the point where the old line to Scranton separates from the Binghamton main line. Even though the D&H no longer uses that route to reach Scranton, the line is used as a bypass around Belden Tunnel for all high and wide loads. Downgrade and wheeling them hard, BM1 roars by RW6A's power, stopped at the signal. We told you SW was a busy place. This is just the usual weekend crowd here on the D&H. The D&H has purchased several of the ex-Lehigh Valley Alco C420s. And as the helper set went by, it looked almost like we had resurrected the Lehigh Valley for a minute there.
Nice, right.
A few moments later, with the pushers tied on, the head end starts to pull. The train is already on the grade here, and it takes a careful hand on the throttle to get 7,500 tons moving uphill again. Alco C420 number 409, along with two U-23Bs, a GP39-2, and another C420 bringing up the rear, put their 10,900 horsepower to work, and she begins to move. By the time the pushers go by, RW6A has a good roll under her. Tunnel, here we come. There used to be a siding here at the south portal of Belden Tunnel. The old signal mast used to govern movements into the tunnel, but today it's no longer used because the siding is out of service. RW6A is moving downgrade here as she comes out of the tunnel and has an easy run from here to Binghamton. The helpers cut away from RW6A on the fly on the other side of the tunnel, just as they did on BM1 a few minutes ago on this side. Back in Binghamton at BD Cabin, RW6A moved around the east leg of the Y and onto the former Lackawanna Main in order to reach the East Binghamton Yard. BD is a hotspot of activity in Binghamton. The Erie, Lackawanna, and the D&H all converge here, and the operator at BD controls most train movements through Binghamton. Conrail still runs a lot of traffic on the old Erie Main, while virtually all of the D&H north-south through trains move through here. As our W6A moved slowly down the XDL and W main and past BD, we took a quick look inside. It was easy to see the route lined up for our train by looking at the red lights on the track panel. We quickly checked the lineup to see who was due out next, and we found that BM3, the second Binghamton Mechanicsville train of the day, was coming. So we moved to BX cabin, just around the corner, so to speak, from BD cabin. The crossing shown here has since been removed, and the northbound trains out of Binghamton now no longer use the Albany main to get out of town. Instead, they use the old main through the middle of Bevere Street Yard. The Albany main is now only used for southbound trains that are routed west on the Old Erie to Hornell and Buffalo. BM3 is led by one of the few EMD units on the D&H roster, but even they are somewhat unusual. They're GP39-2s with a 12-cylinder turbocharged engine turning out 2,300 horsepower. They look very similar to a GP38, but the 38 has no turbocharger and achieves only 2,000 horsepower from 16 cylinders. The D&H is used to maintaining the turbochargers, though, since they're standard equipment on all Alcos and GEs. The same pusher set is again on the way north over the hill, this time shoving hard on the caboose of BM3. There will be no pushers on this train. This is NE 87, southbound out of Binghamton, over the former Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Main to Scranton, Pennsylvania. The D&H now owns this line, and it gives them a much easier route from Binghamton to Scranton, avoiding the long, tough climb up Ararat Mountain and eliminating the need for pushers on the route. By now you should be thinking, where have I seen that lead unit before? If you guessed that she was the lead unit on our W6A, you're right. Ex-Lehigh Valley C420 number 409 and U23B number 2303 spent less than 2 hours in Binghamton after bringing in our W6A before being dispatched out again. Here she's rolling through Corbett'sville, New York along the Susquehanna River in the lead again on NE 87. Even though this is an easier route than the old D&H route, the Lackawanna is not a water-level route by any means. South of Halstead, Pennsylvania, we find the C420 U23B pair working upgrade in the 8th notch. Still working hard but rolling well, NE 87 continues southward through New Milford, Pennsylvania. NE 87 will pass over Tunkhannock Viaduct in Nicholson, Pennsylvania. Tunkhannock is not as famous as nearby Storuca Viaduct, but it is much larger and much more easily photographed. The huge Lackawanna sign on the side of the viaduct leaves no doubt about its original builder and owner. NE 87's engines and train are dwarfed by the immense structure as they move across it. Meanwhile, back at East Binghamton, BJNX is backing out of the yard.
How many you guys got? How many cars? 80.
Remember when we said that Belden Tunnel was a problem for the D&H because of tight clearances? This train is a prime example of the problem. Many of the cars in this train are too large to fit through the tunnel. The D&H can route traffic around the tunnel, but it's not easy. A look at the map can give you a picture of what's going on. Belden Tunnel lies here between Binghamton and Nineveh Junction. The tunnel bypass route follows the Erie Main east out of Binghamton to Lanesboro, Pennsylvania, and over the top of Storuca Viaduct. The Erie connects with the D&H at Jefferson Junction, about a half-mile east of Storuca. Under Conrail, the D&H gained trackage rights on the Erie to Jeff Junction. From Jeff Junction, the D&H main runs almost due north to Nineveh Junction, effectively bypassing the tunnel. But several difficult switching moves must be made at Jeff Junction because of the track layout there. This backup move is caused by the track layout in Binghamton. BJNX must back out of the yard, across the bridge, and through the crossovers at BD Cabin to reach the Erie Main, headed east. The power for BJNX also came off RW6A and consists of a U-23B, a GP39-2, and a C424M. But the schedule on this afternoon was so tight that the hostlers didn't even have time to turn one of the units. That's why they're all running backwards. Now on the Erie, just leaving Binghamton, BJNX is rolling fast along the Susquehanna River. At Oakland, Pennsylvania, A monstrous Erie mainline coaling tower still stands at what used to be a large Erie yard. Oakland was also home base for the huge Erie triplex steam engine, which was used here for a number of years in pusher service. At JN, the railroad's name for Jefferson Junction, BJNX steps slowly through the weed-grown right-of-way and stops near the shanty. But now we have a problem. The crew which ran BJNX over the Erie is not qualified on the D&H to Nineveh. Another crew on another train will take BJNX from here to Nineveh, and that crew is on the way in the form of SU-2s dispatched from Oneonta with 2 cars to bypass the tunnel. Passing under Staruka in the late afternoon sun, SU-2 eased to a stop so the flagman could line the switch for the siding, since BJNX will be backing her whole train down here to run around it in a few minutes.
Okay, George, let's throw them out.
By the time SU-2 reached JN and backed her short train into the clear, quite a crowd had gathered here. Between the 2 train crews and several carloads of rail fans, it looked like a town meeting in the middle of nowhere. But the train crews wasted no time swapping power, and in no time BJNX was pulling out of JN to clear the switch so she could back down to Staruka, retracing the steps of SU-2. Backing down to Staruka, BJNX sets her caboose into the siding and sets the handbrake. They then cut away from the caboose and pull up to clear the switch. They will then back the train down the main line, past the caboose. But this is a difficult move because remember, there are 80 cars in this train. The power then grabs the caboose and puts it back on the train on the opposite end from where it was originally. And then the engines run around the train. The end result of all this shuffling is that BJNX is finally headed in the opposite direction, ready to move north to Nineveh and SW Cabin. In the fading evening light, BJNX is highballing again. Our final day in D&H country begins exactly the same as the previous two, watching BM-1 assault Belden Hill at Phelps Road. This is one of the few times we found an EMD in the lead. GP 39-2 number 7404 leads a U-23B, an RS-36, and a C-424M in the battle for the hill. U-23B number 2312 and X-Reading GP 39-2 number 7412, still in green paint, are today's pushers. But we'll not be following BM-1 up the hill today, because we've got a morning westbound train on the Old Erie, symbol freight MB5, with an all-Alco lash-up of 3 C424Ms, number 461, 2, and 3, with 463 in the lead. As they eased past BD Cabin, we had a feeling that this train was gonna move. Our suspicions were confirmed when MB-5 blasted by us near Owego, New York, making every bit of 50 miles an hour. At Chemung, New York, the Alco trio was just beginning to notch him down and set the air, to slow for a bridge gang at work about a half-mile ahead. Just west of Rathbone, New York, the throttles were back in the 8th notch as MB-5 made up time out of that slow order. Against the lush green backdrop of the beautiful Canisteo River Valley, MB-5 continued her headlong rush towards Buffalo. Those three Alco locomotives certainly looked the part of high-speed freight engines as they thundered through Canisteo, New York. This section of the Old Erie still uses semaphore signals. This signal, just north of Arkport, New York, raised to the all-clear position, providing assurance of a clear railroad ahead for the crew in the highballing MB-5. A special note of thanks to John J. Young, Jr. John graciously served as our navigator and guide while in the Binghamton area shooting this program. Rail fanning with JJ is a lot of fun and an unforgettable experience. He knows the D&H operation so well that we even took time to stop and mail a letter while BM-1 was climbing Belden Hill, and we never missed a shot.